Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Happy post-Valentine's Day to you. This the 15th day of February 2024. PodUp with Matthews in the morning. I am Seth Harp in for Shane. Brent Beaird, our college football insider, with us here over the course of the next 60 minutes. So what do we have in store for you? We got a lot. But first, before we get into it, of course, we check the boxes. Matthews in the morning, PodUp with Matthews in the morning, coming to you live from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. You got Facebook questions, fire away, courtesy of Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law firm partner of the Florida Gators. YouTube questions, courtesy of Quality Plumbing. Can't thank Quality Plumbing enough, Brett. I've been living in the land without a toilet for a week, or my second bathroom house flooded. Quality Plumbing with a big W, no matter what happens in any sporting event over the course of the next month. Quality Plumbing gets the win. Residential and commercial plumbing services, emergency repair. Thank you, guys. Since 1984, their name says it all. Brent Beaird. Oh boy, don't. This is one of the big rules that I always teach the students in broadcasting or anybody. Don't ever say that there's nothing going on, because there's something always going on. You just need to look for it. And boy, do we have a lot today from college football, the playoff new contract, ESPN, 6 years, $7.8 billion. Brent's going to dive into the numbers of that. Also still talking about the college football playoff method with this new $8 billion deal. Are we doing 5-7? Are we doing 6-6? And of course, the other big push today, the athletic director at Texas, Chris Del Conte, the big power and the big money in this conference, is now going to be pushed from Texas. The AD at Texas says 9-game conference schedule sounds good to him. We know Nick Saban like that. Nick Saban is gone now, though. So, Brett, let's start off with that, a 9-game conference slate. Once this playoff expansion is announced, how are we feeling about the SEC going from 8 to 9 when it comes to football?
Well, good morning, Seth. Thank you for helping us again today. And we are in the midst of daily big stories. And this is one of the bigger ones that basically came out yesterday with the Texas athletic director. And by the way, can you imagine how many media are going to go to him with his willingness to lay big stories out on the table? We have talked about this now for years, is when would the SEC go to a 9-game schedule instead of an 8? And it really looked like that there was going to be uniformity in staying with 8, and that we weren't sure even this decade when 9 was coming. Well, according to Del Conte, the 9 is going to be here in 2026. So that's not far away as they get prepared for this. Now, several things came out of it, but basically what DeConte did, Seth, is he had a press conference with the Texas media, and he went over a lot of different situations, and the 9-game conference schedule just kind of came up out of the blue. Okay. I mean, he was talking about other items, and he got into the schedule, what he was looking at the next 2 or 3 years, and was talking about, well, we've got this 8-game schedule that we're going to be starting with this year, then the following year. And then he says, then we'll look at going into a 9-game conference schedule. Now, I want to be careful here. This is not the official word from the SEC, but when you've got someone of DeConte's contacts, this is something that we can really look at during this time. The other fascinating thing that came out of this was, now think about this a minute, Seth. Right now we've got Ole Miss and Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl on Thanksgiving night. Well, what it looks like is going to be changing is DeConte wants the game with A&M. Now, and they play this year, and I don't have to tell our listeners and viewers how big a deal the A&M Texas game is. Well, what it looks like now is what DeConte is trying to do is to get the thing on Thanksgiving night. Oh, my goodness gracious alive. Can you imagine the hype for that thing and what that would be like during that time? So, and again, the 9-game schedule, here's the ups and the downs for that. The up is you get rid of one of the sisters of the poor that you're going to be playing. But again, Seth, doesn't it matter who you draw if you go in 9 games? Let's just say if you're Arkansas and you get Vanderbilt, well, that's probably another win. But the problem is if you're one of the lower half of the league and you draw one of the upper echelon of the league, say Arkansas draws Georgia, and again, we got to remember divisions are now out. Well, we don't go by that. That's not that wouldn't exactly be a win-win for Arkansas, would it, Seth?
Yeah, and this is where it gets interesting: is what is the 9-game going to look like? It's not going to just be 9 rotating teams, right?
Right.
Right. Brent, you and I have talked about this forever because they've been talking about going to 9 games
forever too.
Yeah, but now that when we were at 12 and Missouri and A&M came in 13 years ago now, you thought, okay, well, it's time to go to 9. Well, now that it's 16, it's like, okay, and Texas is smart. Texas knows that having Florida or Georgia or Tennessee in there as opposed to Rice is going to do more for the conference. It's going to do more for revenue. They get it. Part of the reason they're leaving the Big 12 is what?
Yeah.
Because the Kansases of the world and the Iowa States of the world did nothing for them in terms of eyeballs and revenue. So, Brett, I wrote this down. You and I have talked about this before, and the 9-game method, I think, works best now that you have 16 teams in the conference. If you employ the 6-3 method within the 9-game schedule, which means 3 cemented traditional rivals, and then a 6 rotation, home and home. That way, if you're a senior, you play every team in the conference at home once, you play every team in the conference on the road once, and you also play your rivals 4 times. So where I'm going with that is the 3 for Florida I have penned in would be Georgia, Tennessee, and LSU. And then you'd rotate 6. Then you'd rotate 6, rotate 6, rotate 6. So that's the cleanest way I can think of how that would work.
Well, and also to your point, what it also does is it keeps some of these main rivalries going. In other words, Auburn, Georgia will continue to play.
Yeah.
Alabama, Tennessee will continue to play, or at least we think that's what it's going to be, because that was one of the arguments that if you don't go to 6-3, you're going to lose a lot of your traditional rivals. So that's going to make a lot of the conference happy, Seth, that they can keep these games intact.
Yeah, and I'd hate to see the Egg Bowl leave Thanksgiving night, but you know what, Brett, I'm all for. That's a different time zone, right? It's an hour behind us. Hey,
sure.
I'm all for the Egg Bowl at 5 p.m. and Texas A&M at 9 p.m. Brett, I got nothing to do that Friday. Yes. I'm all for it, baby.
I'll tell you what, that would be a boom for the SEC. I will have to see where that goes, but again, those 2 teams are going to play. That is going to revolutionize in a lot of ways some of these rivalries, because that's one of the fiercest rivalries ever. Now, I will also say this, that, and again, a lot of people are going to Del Conte to get answers and to get good quotes. But I'm being realistic and have been told this several times. Texas will find out pretty quickly, Seth. They don't run the SEC. Now, some of their fans and big time boosters think they're going to, but I understand that they have either been told or will be told that basically one person runs the SEC overall, and the presidents and the chancellors and the ADs do. So they're coming into the SEC on the as far as when the cameras are rolling, is going to be one of the tremendous things in the world. But behind the scenes, they're going to know that they've got to vote, and their vote and Vandy's vote is just as big as theirs.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Greg Sankey's going to have his work cut out for him, because you thought you had egos before.
Yes,
there's
that's
nothing
what we
like
mean.
there's nothing like a
Nothing.
10-pound hat and cowboy.
Not even close.
They want to be their own country, Brett.
Yes, not even close.
They're in their own little world sometimes, and buckle up. It's good to have them in the conference. They in Oklahoma, it's good to have them in the conference.
No question.
But it's going to be interesting. There's going to be a little bit of an attitude adjustment. It's going to be fun
watching
this go forward. Again, Brent Beaird with you here, Seth Harp with you here on this Thursday, this February 15th, PodUp with Matthews in the morning. Brent, brought to you by, make sure I do this right, Duffield Home Improvements. He is our guest sponsor of the day, or our guest of the day. Duffield Home Improvements, your local roofing, siding, and window contractor, serving Gainesville and the surrounding area since 1986. How about that? We're going to get to your questions coming up. If you have your Facebook Live questions, fire away, courtesy of Meldon Law. Also, that we are both here today, courtesy of the Crime Prevention Studios. As we love to hop on with you, love to shoot the breeze in this post Valentine's Day. It's also Giving Day at the University of Florida. Stand up and holler, Gator Nation. Listen to all the stations, whether it's WRUF or it's the Gator or it's WUFT throughout the course of the day. It is Giving Day. It's a big day on the campus for all the students and the university, as we raise money to provide Gainesville and the surrounding areas, the greatest form of entertainment when it comes to sports and news and music that we can. And Brent, I always tell people this, and you know this as well. You've been in there. You've seen what we've done. WRUF, ESPN Gainesville, carries more games than any other sports radio station in the country. I signed contracts with 4 different college football providers. I think we had like 40 bowl games on this year. This week alone, I think in the last 7-8 days, Brent, we've had something like 8 softball games. We've got Gator baseball when it comes to Lightning Rays. I think last year we carried something like 550 games in 365 days. So anything that you can do when it comes to Giving Day at the University of Florida, we'd appreciate it. So there you go. So up
listen,
to right.
I will say this real quick. I work and live. I'm in Clay County in Fleming Island, but I work and live and all over Jacksonville. And a good part of my day when I'm in the car is listening to your station, because I can hear it over here clear as a bell. And obviously, a lot of the programs that you run have a Gator and an SEC interest, so I'm listening to different ones all the time. So I certainly appreciate what you guys do, and listen. I know you do this during bowl games.
Yeah.
My goodness, we've got the NCAA tournament before we turn around coming up in a few weeks. I appreciate greatly the number of games that you carry on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I do more if I could.
I know you do all you can.
Yeah. So I think last Saturday we had 4 things on. So again, it's Giving Day at the University of Florida. Anything you can do to be a part of it, we greatly appreciate it. So there we go. Also, any questions you want to fire away during our Titan MRI text line? Good gracious. Ate too much sugar yesterday, Brett. Fire away. The Titan MRI hotline, 352-353-7465. That's 352-353-7465. 74-65. Okay, so we looked at the 6-3, the 9-game model potentially for SEC conference play. Brett, you and I are agreement, right? We want 9 games.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And look, Seth, it's coming if we want it or not, right? They're just absolutely too much money in it not for it to eventually happen.
Yep. The other thing that I think is interesting today is, and these two are connected together. The college football playoff methodology, now that it's going to 12, the 5 and 7 or the 6 and 6. The 6 and 6 was the logic when you had your 5 power conferences, and then the one of the group of 5 conference champions would be that 6th team, and then 6 at larges, however it would go down the pipeline, or 6 other teams. But now that the Pac-12 is dissolved, we're looking at a 5 and 7 model with the 4 major conferences, and then 7, and then still your group of 5 conference champion, and then the rest of them. Brett, this is pretty much, they want to do 6 and 6 with the Pac-12 breaking up. 5 and 7 has to be the answer, correct?
Yeah, I think it will be. Now, what they're going to do, and folks need to circle this date, is the College Football Playoff Board of Managers is expected to vote February the 20th on the model. That would include the 5 highest-ranked conference champions and the next 7 highest-ranked teams in the 12-team playoff. Now, the Pac-12 still wants, even though they're down to 2 teams in Washington State and Oregon State, they still want to have their say-so in this situation. So we think that's where it's going, and that will be next Tuesday when that comes up. So, but again, there's so many things involved with this. And by the way, the Pac-12 and the Mountain West, they've got a temporary scheduling partnership with Oregon State and Washington State. So, look, is that the deal they wanted? No, but it's at least something they can fill out a schedule at this point. So, and I know we got a lot of things to hit, but I did mainly want to say that, Seth, is that we hopefully will have a decision on 5 and 7, which is, yes, what we think is going to be, and that will be the obvious choice on next Tuesday is when that's going to be done. So, but we still have much to figure out in this situation.
Part of this, and what's able to push this forward, is Major College Football and ESPN have agreed on a 6-year, $7.8 billion framework. Just to give you a little bit of an idea how much money, and we know, I mean, once you start to put zeros behind things and commas, once there's 2 commas, once there's 3 commas, I mean, we're dealing in different worlds now.
No doubt.
The old deal was $608 million a year. This one is $1.3 billion a year, and it makes sense, right? Because you add more teams and you add more games and more exposure.
Yes.
However, okay, Brent, here's the big caveat with this. The reason that college football hesitated to expand, or at least thought about hesitating to expand all this time, was because the athletes were raising their hand going, you want us to play more games, but we don't get any more out of it? What?
Right.
What's the incentive for us to play more games? Like, well, you get great exposure. Guys like Marvin Harrison and Jaden Daniels look around and go, we're going to be top 4 picks. Why do we need more exposure? The expansion of the playoffs now does one thing. It now, instead of 4 teams having a taste, you have 12 teams that have a taste. That means there's 8 more teams that won't have early opt-outs. So that's a good thing, right? That's the benefit, one of the big benefits to this. However, Brent, schools are going to have an extra $600 million, or college football teams are going to have an extra $600 million a year. And Brent, believe you me, I already went through and did the math. You ready for this? If you just take $100 million a year off the top of this, remember, college football is making an extra $600 million.
Right.
If you just take 100 million, just 100 million, which is less than 10%, you can cut a check for $20,000 for every Division I football player all the way from the SEC to the MAC. So my question when they go to this and they extend all these games, there is now not an excuse, Brent, to make these guys employees and pay them and make them sign or give them 2-year contracts. It slows down the transfer portal. They are now employees. They get benefits, the whole 9 yards, right? And they get that anyway. If you tear your ACL, the university pays for your surgery. You don't pay for your surgery. You've got the money now to make all these guys employees because that's $600 extra million you didn't have before. And I'm just asking for 10% of it. So, Brent, right now we want to solve this NIL problem. There's no easy, quick fix, but part of it, I know people don't like it. I know we long for yesteryear, but the only way to slow this down is, I think, Brent, you got to make them employees now.
Yeah. Look, and that's coming, and it will be. And some people are saying, and I get this, that the college football is going to be NFL light.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to look at it that way, you could, meaning that yes, they will be employees. They will be basically contracts, and again, we'll get into this more over as the off season continues. What goes along with this is, if you're an employee, you can also get fired, and if you're an employee, what I've certainly read and heard about this is also going to do away with scholarships, and I'll be interested to see how this actually is going to work. And again, as Seth said, we don't have to like this, but that's where we're going. And part of the untapped revenue right now is this television revenue, and the thing that we're dealing with at this point. So, and also, by the way, last week the SEC announced, all this stuff kind of goes hand in hand, that the SEC revenue for last year, and this is without a lot of this stuff that Seth and I were talking about this morning, but $718 million last year, $51 million per school. And I have seen figures where, and not too long in the distant future, Seth, that SEC teams are going to be making $100 million a year per school. So, and I'm sure you've probably done the math on that too. Now, the other question, and I'm trying to be broad here without getting too far into the weeds, but someone's going to ask this question, and you're as good a person to answer this as anybody I know. Okay, ESPN has got the rights to this game as far as the playoff is concerned. Now, my understanding is there is going to be at some point people are going to be asking, well, what about streaming? What about Fox? What about some of these other things? Now, my understanding is, yes, and help me on this, Seth, ESPN will hold the rights, but they will allow at some point some of these other entities to get in here and be a part of this too. They're still working some of this out, but Seth, needless to say, at some point, a lot of these other folks are going to have it may be a small slice, but they're going to have a little slice of the pie too.
Yeah, I look at it like this. Have you ever been to Disney or have you ever been to an amusement park? Brent, you
Sure.
know how you can pay extra money and go to the front of the line with Fast Pass?
Correct.
Right. So that's what you're doing is you're finding a way to you already got them in the park. How do we make more money on them now that we got them in the park?
Absolutely.
So what you're going to see is you see this in the NFL. They had a Nickelodeon coverage of the Super Bowl, right? With SpongeBob and Dora and all that. You're going to see, if you're college football, why wouldn't you snag an extra $25-30 million by doing something like that?
Right.
And it's one of these things, and people say, well, how much money do you want? How much money do they need? Billionaires don't stay billionaires by saying, I've made it. So it's a constant revenue stream, and it's an arms race, right?
It is. It is.
And LSU's got sleep pods in the locker room, Brent. And then we talked about this. Yes. Clemson's got a slide. So people have barber shops and arcades, and Alabama's got fountains. It's going to continue, and it's going to continue, and it's going to continue. And you have to ask yourself this as it starts to go forward. It's like, well, how much is too much? How much is too much? You look at it, and arms race comes from what? It comes from the military term from Russia or the Soviet Union, United States. new shiny weapons, new shiny weapons, new shiny weapons. It's just like new shiny, caricatures, new shiny things. So I look
Right.
at it. It's not going to stop anytime soon. But
No.
the money the money that starts to go into the players, it slows it down a little bit. So there you go. In terms of finances, but this is where this is headed. Brent, but this thing, it goes through 2032, right? I think that's what I saw. So we're going to be at 12 at least through 2032, correct?
Right. I'm saying that with a caveat, because the other thing that you're seeing let me be clear about this. There is no official, my goodness, we're just now starting with 12.
Yes.
There is no official, in 4 years we're going to 16. But here's a reality. There is plenty of talk about the possibility of going to 16 in the not too distant future. And when you talk to some of these commissioners, you're going to hear some of that as a possibility for that to happen. Look, there have been some talks about, and this is sermon on another day too, about some kind of extension or expansion of the NCAA basketball tournament.
Yes.
So that there are a lot of things right now there in the hopper that haven't been developed yet and are not official yet, but that does not mean that we're not going to be able to expand. This is just a guess here, okay? We get 12 rolling. They see the money in it. Seth, you and I both know we've done this long enough that I would think, and this is just a guess, this is nothing official, within certainly within 10 years, we would probably be at 16. Is that a decent guess?
Yeah, look at, and I'm glad you brought this up because we're going to get to this in the second half of the show. The expansion of the basketball tournament, because we were at 64 forever, and it's a perfect bracket. Adding that first four, like in Dayton, where you have 8 teams right over the course of 2 days.
Correct.
Just that television and revenue alone, I read, is something like $20 to $25 million. That's for 4 games with a bunch of 16 seeds and a bunch of bottom of the barrel teams.
Absolutely.
So if you look around and go, we can add, 2 or 3 more games and make an extra $200 million. You really think there's going to be a conference commission that goes like, you know what? I don't want $200 million. It's not going to happen. So expansion. It's eventually going to, playoffs are going to continue to expand. Why? Because as fans continue to put more and more of an emphasis on championships, and not only fans, but everybody, right? And less emphasis on, regular season. There was a discussion the other day I heard, was the 49ers season a failure? Good God, they had the lead.
Really?
Overtime. They got beat, so unless you win the championship, it's a failure. So, we're heading down that path. Smooth first half of the show. Brent Beaird, along with me, Seth Harp, on this Thursday. So smooth. You ready for this? This is really going to be really lame, Brent, but it's a good product. Brought to you by Tropical Smoothie. Live a healthier lifestyle with their bold, beautiful, and flavorful smoothies and amazing food. Tropical Smoothie. When you eat better, you feel better. All right, second half of the show. Brett brought some of the stuff up that we're going to dive into, including, we know the SEC and the Big Ten now are becoming blood brothers when it comes to kind of leaving the NCAA behind. The Big 12 and the ACC, just like a little brother chasing big brothers down the road. Hey, don't forget about us. We want to be a part of this too. Brent mentioned how the dominoes will fall on this a little bit, and what it could mean for the NCAA basketball tournament, what it means for college football. And we already see a little bit of a sliver of what life could look like without the NCAA. We saw it this last year. Brett and I are going to dive into that next on this Thursday edition of PodUp with Matthews in the Morning.
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime prevention security systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Campus USA, put some star power to work in your financial life with Campus USA Credit Union. Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, watch. Duffield Home Improvements for your window, siding, and roofing needs. Radware, your local provider of promotional products, uniforms, and apparel. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Silverback Concrete, Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Radware, F45, Quality Plumbing. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Q Billiards and Sports Bar. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Pro football legend Emmitt Smith understands your joint pain.
It does not surprise me that there are a ton of people out there that's in pain.
That's why Emmitt is such a proponent of QC Kinetics, offering real lasting joint pain relief with non-surgical, all-natural biologic treatments.
Whether it's a joint pain, ankle pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, back pain, hip pain, any kind of pain, the body eventually will break down when it's under that much stress.
That stress can cloud your judgment to the point that you'll just say yes to the scalpel or yes to another prescription of pain pills. But maybe it's time for a second opinion from QC Kinetics.
The reason why I would recommend this is because the natural biologics that QC Kinetics is providing you gives your body a chance to naturally heal itself.
Restorative, regenerative solutions are here. Get lasting relief and live your life.
Call QC Kinetics 352-400-4550. That's 352-400-4550. QC Kinetics 352-400-4550.
Continue to roll along. PodUp with Matthews in the morning. I am Seth Harp. He is Brent Beaird with you here on this 15th day of February 2024. Brent joining us today, courtesy of Duffield Home Improvements, your local roofing, siding, and window contractor, serving Gainesville and the surrounding area since 1986. Also brought to you in part by Radware. Family-owned business priding itself on excellent customer service while providing quality and affordable promotional products and customized apparel. That is Radware. I need Radware to cook me up some Harp-On sports jackets and apparel. You know, too many fans out there, Brent. Too many slicks, autographs to sign. I need more stuff. All right. So here we are as we move along with you here on this Thursday. No, so far, what have we talked about? In case you missed any of the show, the conference expansion inside of the SEC to 9 games. It's what Texas Athletic Director Chris Del Conte wants to do. Will the other remaining 15 schools in the SEC to be on board with that? What do they need, Brent? I think they need 10 votes, whatever. And now that they're at 16, I don't know what the majority, who the tiebreaker is now when it comes to this. I guess it would be Greg Sankey, but when would that get done? The 5-7 or 6-6 model with the playoffs. Also, the new college football contract that's on the horizon for the expanded playoffs, doubling the amount of money, $1.3 billion coming in, and what that means for college football going forward. Brett, of course, you know, we've discussed it, we've talked about it, but there's new layers to this every single day, and that is the thought process of the SEC, Big Ten, and other major conferences breaking away from the NCAA. We now sit at a time where what seemed to be too complicated or unfathomable is now likely. It's a question of when, not if. And the SEC and the Big Ten forming their own alliance or whatever you want to call this to look into this. That's where the money is in college football. It's in those two conferences predominantly. The ACC and the Big 12 coming out in the last 48 hours saying, hey, we're going to be a part of this too. Don't worry, we're going to be a part of this. So now you have the Big Four kind of looking around going, all right, that's about enough. So what does that mean? Well, that means ramifications for all sports, right? Not only football, but it means ramifications for college basketball, the NCAA tournament. Okay, I'll ask you, Brent, on this. The timeline for this, from what you've heard, what you've read, what you have seen, when's the earliest we could have the major conferences sending the NCAA a Dear John letter here?
I think a lot of this is going to be determined by what the NCAA is able to do and what Congress is able to do. There are a lot of moving parts here. Charlie Baker, who is the new president, has been involved with a lot of these meetings. I mean, he is a lot of these meetings they do virtually, obviously, and he has been involved with that. So I think a lot of that is going to be determined, and Greg Sankey basically mentioned this, that they would, and look, part of this is, okay, we're the Big Ten in the SEC. We win the most championships. We provide the most teams in the playoffs, but we're not getting the amount of revenue that we think we should be getting. That's part of this too. Now look, people are probably listening to this and thinking, well, how much more do they want? Well, go back to what Seth said a little bit ago. With the money they bring in, they know they've got to have a constant stream of it. So, and the other things happening here too, presidents and chancellors used to be dead set against the playoffs and all that Seth and I have been talking about. That has been changed, and Seth, you know the reason it is because presidents and chancellors are seeing what they would say would be a convenient revenue stream through sports, right? With the playoffs and with all that's going on here. So I think probably right now we're going to have a period of time where it's a year or two at least, where they kind of see where a lot of this is going, how it's going to fit together. Is the NCAA going to actually come up maybe with some wisdom here and all of them be able to devise a deal to where it's going to be able to work? And look, Seth and I have not even talked about what's going to happen with the ACC. And again, Florida State's leaving the ACC. This is just a matter of time, and they're basically just right now working on a settlement behind the scenes, which is a lot of this. And you've got several other teams that are going to be leaving. So with all Seth that you and I have been talking about this morning, what is also going on is that expansion, never dead, only dormant, is going to be coming again with these next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So do I dare lay anything else on top of this pile of stuff that we've been talking about? That expansion is in there too.
Yeah, and it's the way I look at it too is the NCAA originally started as what? It started as the governing body, but not the disciplinary body of college sports. The NCAA's organization was what? To make sure everybody was academically eligible, to make sure everybody fit the proper protocols, also to hand out trophies, to organize tournaments.
Yeah, and events, yes.
Yes, that's what it was designed to do. And all of a sudden it became this disciplinary faction in this arm.
Right.
And I look at the NCAA a lot the way I look at like Roger Goodell in the NFL, where the owners are more than happy to let Roger Goodell get drug in front of Congress for things that take place. More than happy to let that happen. Why? Because then their hands stay clean. Roger Goodell's the one that's all the steroid stuff. Roger Goodell's over all these targeting and all these head trauma issues. He's the commissioner. We're just meanly little owners. So now you have a situation where the NCAA is always the one getting drug in front of the Supreme Court, right, Brent? It's not the colleges. Yes. It's the governing body. So if and when they break away, it's going to be interesting to see how major conferences govern themselves.
Yes.
And I think we already saw a precursor to it, Brent, this year with the Big Ten and Jim Harbaugh. I think we already see what's going to happen when the Big Four break away. Do you think for 1 second the Big Ten or the SEC is ever going to remove one of their schools from national championship contention? Never going to happen.
No.
Everybody,
No.
Brett, the one thing that I can tell everybody, that if they break away from the NCAA, schools will no longer be giving back wins over the years. They will no longer be taking down banners. What they will do is they will punish. If they punish, they'll punish their coaches, or they'll punish with the way that Michigan punished Jim Harbaugh, right? You're going to sit for 3 games and it's over. That's what's going to happen going forward. And I don't know, going down the path, if you're a bloodthirsty person and you love punishment, the new method, or once they break away, Brent, I really see a hard time Greg Sankey coming in the middle of the year going, you know what, LSU, you don't get to play in the college football playoff this year. That's never going to happen.
No, because LSU would bring in too much money. And again, to your point, and that's a good one, the penalties are going to be different.
Yes.
In other words, you're not going to punish innocent players who had no involvement with this at all. Now, what they're going to do is going to be, they're going to fine the school an ungodly amount of money. And the other thing that's going to happen is, and you saw this with the Alabama baseball coach that was involved in gambling, you're going to see show causes of multiple years. And see, that would be, now, look, Seth, if you want to punish some people, and the NCAA, they had an opportunity to do this with the FBI, and they refused to do it. So, in other words, Bohannon, the Alabama baseball coach, got a 15-year show cause. Well, you're saying, well, so what does that do? Well, Seth, look, if you're out of coaching for 15 years, during that time, you better find you something else to do in your line of work besides coaching. So, no, I hear your point loud and clear. That's one of the things that's going to be changing too, would be from the enforcement arm, a different kind of punishment that, or at least the variety of it, and maybe the severity of it, than we've seen before.
It'll be, and I love that. The one thing, Brent, that you can't allow people around a sport that throw games. You can't.
No, absolutely not. Agreed.
You know what? Yeah. And steroids, and that's cheating. Yeah, but you're not losing on purpose. Right? If you're competing, you're trying to gain an advantage. The minute I know the game's not on the up and up, you's gots to go. That's why I have no problem with what they did with the Alabama coach. I have no problem with Pete Rose not playing in baseball, being banned. The minute that, he just bet on his team to win. Yeah, except when he didn't bet. And a non-bet is a bet to lose. So the gambling inside of the game on your own team, you're done. And he just gave. It's no different than insider trading. Yeah, those people should be in jail too, Brent. So if you're cheating and you're gaming the system, I have no problem with you going to those concrete jungles with steel rebar and bars. No problem with that whatsoever. Speaking of concrete, how about this? PodUp with Matthews in the Morning is brought to you by Silverback Concrete. Silverback Concrete is a family-led team of heavy concrete specialists that build commercial structures with unrivaled quality. Silverback Concrete, you stand on it, and we stand by it. Also, PodUp with Matthews in the Morning brought to you in part by Ruse-Olga State Farm Insurance, dedicated insurance professionalists ready to help life go in the right direction for you and your family. Visit ograinsurance.com. That's ograinsurance.com, or give them a call at 352-240-1779. That's 352-240-1779. So, okay, that's where this, we talked about where this is going, where this is heading. Something that we are going to get for the last time, Brent, coming up here in 6 weeks, if I read this correctly. and he hung up his headset, what is it, 6 years ago now, 7 years ago now, in the SEC booth. But Vern Lundquist, going to call it a career across the board. He's still been doing NCAA tournament basketball games, right? He's still
Yes.
been doing the Masters, is where I'm going with this. But Vern hanging it up. We know synonymously, college football, at least when I was growing up, you tied it into Keith Jackson on ABC, and, Monday Night Football was Keith and Howard, and you had your national, brands. Vin Scully was the game of the week on whether it was CBS or NBC or ABC when it comes, and also the voice of the Dodgers. But Vern is the SEC college football guy of a generation. He is.
Yes.
To this generation, Brent, I think what Keith Jackson was to my generation in terms of the scope of college football. When I think of national college football broadcasts, the last 20, 25 years, I think of Vern. And now that, he's been out of college football for a while, but now that he's going to hang up the headset completely, probably one of the 10 best to ever do it.
People would call him Uncle Vern because he had a broadcasting style that made you comfortable with him. And look, there were times, I remember many times when he was doing college football and there was this play that was unbelievable. Vern, instead of describing the play, Vern just said, "Wow." And that pretty much summed up the play. Wasn't real descriptive, but that is pretty much what he did from time to time to describe it, and people really took to what he said, or maybe sometimes what he didn't say. He was amusing. It's not to say he wasn't informative, but but look, Seth, you're doing something right if you've done 40 Masters, haven't you? Look, in terms of longevity and people being in the media, right now 5 years is a long time, isn't it? Much less when you're looking at 40. But I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah.
And look, Seth, how many people do you know who not only did the Masters well, but the NCAA tournament in college football, and it was really good in all of them?
Yeah. And, those, what do I call them? The three-headed spears, the tridents of broadcasting. The guy that always we mention is Jim Nantz, right? Because Jim Nantz will do the Super Bowl. He'll pivot right into the NCAA tournament, right into the Masters. Jim, moving away from college basketball, still, of course, going to be doing TV for CBS and also the Masters. But Vern was one of those guys that did major college football, the NCAA tournament, and the Masters as well. Jim was just the NFL guy that did it. Of course, Vern was equally on par with Jim in terms of covering major entities. He just did college football instead of the NFL. So it's one of the, and Vern still has, it's funny because of all Vern's calls that I can remember, the golf one with Tiger Woods and the Nike swoosh and the ball rolling in was on 16 at Augusta. It's still one of the better calls. It's one of those things that the chip, and that was what 2005, I think, is when that was. 2000, was it 2004, 2005? Oh my God, 20 years ago. But that's the iconic call of his career, and it was a chip in golf. So if you can make that interesting, I think you can make anything interesting. And Vern, as he hangs it up, but like I said, he's one of those top 10 that's ever done it. And to be able to do three different sports and do three different sports well. And also, the criticism, and we're in a day and age where every broadcaster gets criticized, right, Brent? I don't like Herb Strait. I don't like Fowler. I don't like Vern's one of those guys. If you didn't like Vern, you chose not to like Vern.
Oh yeah, he was easy to listen to, and look, and most of it was with obviously was with Gary in college football, but he allowed his analysts to be able to analyze the game Vern, frankly, was funny in many ways. So he will truly be missed. And now I would have. I'm segueing into something else here. What would have really been funny with Vern would have been what we're getting closer to having helmet communication between the coach and the players instead of holding up these silly signs that of Scooby Doo and Martians and so forth on the sidelines to throw the opposition off. What would have been funny to have heard Vern describe the helmet to coach communication with what's coming down the pike now.
And look, Brent, if old school Major League Baseball that moves along at a snail's pace,
yes,
a couple of years ago can decide, all right, we're going to create a communication system between the catcher and the pitcher, so we eliminate sign stealing. Then college football can put microphones and speakers in helmets.
Sure, they can. Absolutely. So yes, and this is coming.
Yes.
Also, and by the way, the ACC this week approved football teams to provide access to in-game video, enhancing ability to make in-game adjustments. Now, we'll have to see kind of how that plays out. Lord, there's just been something every day here, as folks can figure out by now. But this helmet communication is now. My understanding is, do they put a little sensor or whatever in all the helmets so you can communicate with everybody, or just the quarterback? I'm not sure how this is going to play out, but to your point, this is way overdue, isn't it, Seth? And my stars, people are going to say, well, can we afford it? I think it's one of those things to where it's almost that you can afford it at some point.
Yep, you got the resources.
You can't afford not to have it. That's what I want to say.
Yeah, come on. There's certain things that the evolution of this has just moved too fast. Like, remember, Brett, 10 years ago, we didn't have a camera on the goal line.
That's right.
Touchdowns. Now you wouldn't think, how is that possible that never occurred? There are times it didn't. Questions rolling in here, Brent, before we wrap up. I know we just got a couple of minutes. Let's see here. Brian writing in, what are your thoughts on the Gators making the tournament this year in college basketball? Are they off the bubble? Yeah, it's 7-4 in the conference, Brett. I think they're off the bubble. A loss the other night would have put them, flirting with the bubble again. But with Auburn beat South Carolina by 40 last night.
Yes. Yes.
And to have that win under your belt, to have the Kentucky Road win under your belt, it doesn't look pretty at times, but it's 7-4 in the conference. And I heard the other night, Sean Kelly said this: Gator basketball's 10 games above 500 for the first time in a decade. Yeah, they're in right now. They can play themselves out of it, but they're in right now. And they've got Georgia on the road and Alabama on the road.
They've actually got 2 games with Alabama, and the next week's in Tuscaloosa. Then they've got them in Gainesville. Bama leads the SEC right now. So, and I think probably what will happen, Seth, they will split those 2 games, and that would give Florida another big win too.
Yep, I agree. Like if they can beat Georgia this weekend, they'll be 8-4 in the conference. And in an 18 game, it's almost impossible then for them to finish below 500 in the conference.
Right.
So what they've done this year, Brett, they've won every game that they should have won, and they're splitting with the big boys. Right? They lost to Kentucky. They beat Kentucky. They've beaten Auburn now. Now you can sit there and say, well, losing at Ole Miss, winning in this conference is hard. Just on the road. Just ask A&M what happened at Vanderbilt the other night. So, tough to do.
Into Florida is a 10 seed right now with Lenardi facing a 7 seed, which you'd rather be a 10 than you would a 8 or a 9.
Absolutely.
And end up having to face a number 1. And Florida is one of maybe a handful of teams that does not have a loss in quads 2 through 4. So to Seth's point, if they just, shall we say, hold serve at this point, beat the teams they're supposed to beat, and then win against another team in the upper echelon, I think they're fine for the tournament.
I do too. I think well, they're in right now as long as they don't lose like 4 or 5 down the
Yes.
stretch or something like that. But a bigger question for you as we wrap up today, my Campus USA closing thought. How about this? Brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Put some star power to work in your financial life with Campus USA Credit Union. It's time to start discussing Todd Golden being SEC Basketball Coach of the Year. South Carolina's having a great year, but if he can beat South Carolina, it's time. He's not the favorite right now. Lamont Paris at South Carolina is, but isn't it amazing where we were 6 weeks ago, Brent? How Strickland doesn't know what he's doing. This is terrible, and was the wrong guy, and oh my gosh, Gator athletics are in trouble. Tennis, track and field, as always, are going to be national title contenders. Softball's got the best freshman in the country on the mound. Baseball is loaded, trying to make another trip back to Omaha, and now Gator men's basketball is 10 games above 500 for the first time in a decade. It could be the greatest spring in terms of pedigree for 5 sports that we have seen in a decade plus in Gainesville. So how about that? Yeah. So
they're playing extremely well, and look, they're a fun team to watch. They've got 3 or 4 bigs who are very good, and that is going to bode well for them. Really good rebounding team. It seems like they block at least a half a dozen shots every game. So if folks haven't gone out to see them play before the season is over, they should get out because they will be very entertained by this basketball team.
It's a good team. It's a tournament team. Its ceiling's probably the Sweet 16, but when's the last time you could say that? It's been probably 5 or 6 years, right? Here at Florida.
Yes.
Brent, man, as always, it goes by way too fast, and we appreciate you swinging on, courtesy of Duffield Home Improvements today, and everybody that was a part of it. All the questions we got to, the ones that were asked, at least a couple of them here. So as always, can't thank you enough. Can't thank Brent enough. Zach Rothrock, Freddie Wiebe, Shane Matthews, the whole gang here at PodUp with Matthews in the morning. So there you go. We are ready for this, Brent. We are closer to April than we are to December now that it's February.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
There you go, baby. As always, appreciate it. Brent Beaird, Seth Harp, for everybody involved, thank you very much. Enjoy your Thursday. Enjoy the start of Gator baseball. And I know Shane-O and company will be back tomorrow. As always, take care, and thank you for your time.